So that everything you said there sort of fits with a lot that I want to ask Todd too. But before I forget, yeah, just the idea of we're in this like individualistic culture that started with obviously like in the Romantic era, and then now we're just like gung ho, competitive, self-obsessed shitheads. So it's really changed. But I had a couple things before I forget. I noticed with you both, it's sort of you recognize the direness of the situation and are concerned about the progress, but at the same time there's that bit of optimism and hope. And that also reminds me of both of you, I know, talk about sort of the power of uncertainty and how it can cripple us, but at the same time it also has this infinite potential, because we're forced to think in new ways and sort of break through old patterns of thought. So yeah, if you guys, either one, maybe Todd, you haven't talked yet for a bit, so do you want to respond to that in any way?
Sure. I would say, interrupt me if I go too far in the wrong direction, but I mean, for me, as I say something in the book, which I meant, and that is that probably in the preface, I say something like that, the facts of climate change is kind of like, if you pay attention, one is radicalized by reality. It's not that I'm I don't have a history of activism. I'm just a professor who teaches the history of philosophy and has a special interest in psychoanalysis. The problem that I have is, well, for my intro classes, I always want to say to the students that philosophers still exist and they're still interested in the contemporary world. Although I must say, in my experience, only barely and very poorly for the most part. Philosophers engage with the current world so badly, it seems to me, half the time. And what I wanted to do is show them that it can be done differently, and that there are people that are doing it differently. And when they're not doing it differently, well, then we'll look at them instead. We'll look at Russell Brand or Naomi Klein. I don't care what discipline they're in. They're asking important questions, and so kind of radicalism or even an activism. It becomes almost, I think, a feature of necessity these days. And so, all I'm saying for myself is that it certainly has changed my trajectory. And I can't see how it wouldn't change anybody's trajectory if they're paying attention at all. And my thought is, insofar as climate change is a global experience and we're all experiencing it in one way or another, or if we're not experiencing it, somebody in a 5 degrees of separation for sure that we know is experiencing it in some ways, as long as you understand that includes even things like pension shortfalls and rising, fires and things like that. If you understand it's all connected, you can see that it's everywhere. It seems to me that there is something around which we can imagine something like a globalized consciousness. And it's not, what it is it's just unified around one central important thing, which is not like, let's just say, identity politics or some concern which is possibly valid, but this is bigger. We can all disagree on all the other things that are important to us as, let's say, left-leaning intellectuals. But we should all agree, left and right, that we want to survive into the future and maintain some sort of civilization for grandkids. So I think it's this a kind of universal, if you want to call it that, consciousness is possible simply because the problem is so grand, it's so global, that nobody, even a right wing or a left wing person or somebody that kind of was disinterested in politics like myself, would nonetheless be dragged into it and have to have an opinion which includes, yeah, it'd be great to save the planet from mass extinction. I mean, we can all gather around that in a pretty easy way, I think. And I'm hoping that that's the moment that we're in right now, which for me is tied up with understanding and maybe affirming the idea that we're exiting the Holocene and entering something called the Anthropocene. You can call it whatever you like, but I like having a name for it so people can understand that we've left something behind. And that means, what is the future going to look like? Well, we don't know. I want that level of uncertainty just to wake people up and to make them, people like myself, willing to go stand on the street and be seen and heard by politicians. Yeah. That activism by the former middle left or middle right would be essential to make anything happen, because they need to be radicalized by the reality of the situation, which is my own experience. So
That's so well. So I already wrote down radicalized by reality, and then the feature of necessity. That's so true. And then also about having that bit of hope about like the awakening, because like our behavior is contagious, right? So then like manners are contagious, like David Hume said as well. So we're seeing other people waking up, so that's going to spark other people, and that's infinite ripple of consciousness expanding forever. So there is totally hope in that, which I love. And then before I forget, I had one more thing I wanted to say, but I think it's better just, the importance of interdisciplinarity then. Because yeah, if there are some sort of disciplines that maybe aren't focusing on issues like this enough, it's good to sort of bring in all perspectives, which is again, the idea of the interconnected world and interconnected brain. The more ideas they can get from different disciplines, the more empathetic they'll be and better equipped to bring about change, which is awesome. But yeah, so Carolyn, do you wanna respond to that, and then maybe I'll get Todd to maybe talk about the Anthropocene condition, because yeah, you have some cool stuff to say about that too.
So in the work that Bryn and I have been doing, one of the metaphors that I like to use is to compare our eco-anxiety to health anxiety, which is when people feel as though something is wrong, but they're not sure what. It's that state of uncertainty is terrifying, but it also drives people to action. People want to learn. They go out there to educate themselves. They want to try and do something to change whatever, like if the uncertain trajectory into the future includes doom, they want to do something to try and forestall that. And they do that through trying to educate themselves and communicate with one another. When it's a matter of physical or mental illness, people connect with one another through support groups and support networks. And I suppose that's part of the eco-awakening is how people are doing the same thing. They're waking up illness of our planetary health. There's a lot that's unknown, a lot that's terrifying, but it's driving people to find out more, driving people to make some connections. So the uncertainty can be potentially paralyzing. Terror can be paralyzing, but it can also be really motivating and productive of inquiry and then action. And then, yeah, I mean, disciplinarity only matters to people in disciplines. So ordinary people trying to educate themselves, they don't care if they're getting an idea from a biologist or a philosopher or an historian. If the idea connects with them and seems to be helpful in some way, they'll run with it. And of course, there's problems with that when people are sort of picking and choosing the ideas that they want to hear. Then that's how we also end up with conspiracy theories. Just put that to the side. But it can be really productive of creative thinking that transcends disciplinary boundaries. And we academics could probably learn something from that.